I'm gonna let you drive this time. I got my. I'm just
Okay,
hanging
that's
out.
probably better. Are you not
I'll give
going?
you a dog.
Are you not going to shout at a hippie?
Well, when we pull over. Get out of the way, you hippie. There you go.
There you go.
You Long Island hippie.
That means that that it's Septic Shock road trip time, and yes, our state by state travel through independent horror of the golden age.
Well, to be honest, now it's like a city by city.
Brings us to Long Island, New York, for a Long Island double bill of The Flesh Eaters and Silent Night, Bloody Night, and Q Ron complaining to me that The Flesh Eaters is filmed but not actually set in Long Island. Take it away, Ron.
The Flesh Eaters was filmed but not set in Long Island.
Thank you. Okay, good to get that out the way. Because you didn't like it when we did Attack of the Beast Creatures.
I'm just saying these are your rules. It's your rules, and you're the one breaking them. So you can break them all you want, but just
slippery slope. Thin end of the wedge.
It's a slippery slope. You break your own rules once, and then we're doing movies set in Spain. I don't know myself.
Right. Yes. Okay. I'll keep that in mind, Ron. I've been warned. So yes. So 61 to 64. Black and white, as we mentioned, shot in Montauk, Long Island. This is The Flesh Eaters, as directed by Jack Curtis, written by Arnold Drake. First time watched for you, Ron?
Yes.
Okay. Black and white film, and this is about alcoholic actress played by Rita Morley and her personal assistant, as played by Barbara Wilkinson, need to get to, well, they say Provincetown. Is this Provincetown as in like nearby Baltimore Provincetown they're going to? I was trying to figure out the route of their, for a start, I'm not sure where they're flying from in the first place. And then, so what I mean is, would that flight path actually take them over Long Island? So that it might be Long Island, but they don't say Long Island. They just say it's an island, and I get the feeling it's. So is the Provincetown that?
Well, it's a deserted island, so I doubt it's Long Island because Long Island has people living on it, right? So.
Well, it was 1961.
But still living there in 1960.
Well, anyway, they ask this pilot, played by Byron Sanders, to fly them to. She's got some kind of audition or some movie she has to get to or something. And yes, a storm ends up. They crash land on this island, wherever the fuck it is, and they encounter Martin Kozlek, who's kind of doing Udo Kier before there was an Udo Kier. As
I was going to say that. I was like, oh, this guy really reminds me of Udo Kier.
Yeah, so, even looks a bit like Udo Kier, doesn't he?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So I was like, at first I thought, is that Udo Kier? I was like, oh no, this is before Udo Kier was even.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he was born, but I'm sure he was not there yet. So.
Right. And he's on this island, automatically suspicious, seems to be up to no good, and there's a menace in the form of a kind of a flesh-eating parasite that seems to have been released into the water. There's like a pre-credit sequence, right, with a guy and his chick out on a yacht, and they jump in the water and they just seem to dissolve and melt. And later on, we found a very clean-looking, washed-up skeleton on the beach, and
still holding the bikini top.
Yes, and Beatnik turns up on a raft for some reason. As played by Ray. Hey, like, I'm Ray Tudor, man, and I'm look at the scene, digging the raft, dude.
The language of love, man. It's love.
He's quite amusing, isn't he? This Beatnik character. And yeah, he turns up, and they try not to fall in the water and get eaten by this parasite, but also seems to turn into some kind of big monster at one point as well. like some kind of monster parasite thing. That's about it. And
yeah, and it's
yes,
it turns out that he's that the Martin calls like is like a an evil scientist who's doing this on purpose to infect the world's water or something, and he's going to get the governments to pay him.
And he's a Nazi as well, right? Because we get
he's a Nazi, yeah.
So well, in the version we watched, which is kind of like the longer version, you do get these scenes that had been inserted later, actually, by this guy called M.A. Rips, who of course famously put out Poor White Trash as well. He's the he had this extra footage shot of like some Nazi experiments where they make some people jump in a pool and melt, right? And that's kind of been integrated into this wasn't in some early prints of the film, I think.
Right.
But I suppose what's notable about, well, both today's films we'll get to in a way, they're both kind of embryonic proto versions of things that would later be genres, I guess. So this is kind of it's kind of an early gore film, right? I mean, it's pre Blood Feast, although it wasn't released until '64 in most places, but it definitely does have just enough. There's a few brief flashes of quite visceral gore for the time, right? Like not what you expect from this era.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And also seeing it in black and white as well is kind of disconcerting and strange.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We got a little bit of this before when we were talking Horror of Party Beach as well, right? There was some brief kind of so that's why this is here. That's why we're talking about it. And it's a kind of a bit of a proto gore film, and it's got these kind of interesting effects as well. The parasite thing is actually, they put pins in the film, right? They stuck pins through the film, so you get that weird glowing parasite effect. That's what that is.
Oh, that's how they did it. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. It's kind of in between a 50s monster film vibe and something that would come along a little bit later.
Right.
It's just an odd, it's just a slightly offbeat, odd little film. What did you make of The Flesh Eaters, Ron? Did you enjoy this?
Yeah, I actually surprisingly really enjoyed this movie.
It's quite good fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it was good fun, actually. I didn't have high hopes for it when it started. I was kind of like, oh, okay, here we go with another one of these. But it sort of surprised me a lot and at a lot of places. And I found myself like fully like immersed in enjoying it. Yeah. So it was I think that the only thing I would say is that the black and white worked against it in terms of the actual flesh-eating bacteria, right? Because I found that they would kind of shine on the water, and you say like, oh, look at the bacteria, they're shining and stuff, but it just looked like it was just kind of the sun reflecting off of the water. So I couldn't really tell what I was supposed to be looking at. So I think that was the one thing that kind of worked against it. But it was, as you said, a lot gorier, or a lot like better, like special effects gore than I expected for a movie of this sort of caliber and time. Like there's a part where he gets bit on his leg, and so you can see like the bites in his leg, and then someone takes a knife and like cuts a piece of his skin of his leg off and stuff. I didn't expect to see something like that in this one. And
when
the guy melts.
Yeah, or the beatnik when his intestines melt out from his stomach and stuff. And
And then another guy melts, his face melts, and you could see his kind of So like that was at the end, the Martin caused like melts, whatever. So yeah, it was. I mean, they full on went there with that, and even the 50s monster was kind of fun to look at. It was really, it was quite well done. It was kind of, I guess by those standards, maybe a little bit scary. And then they sort of, up the ante by putting it in the ocean and making one 100 times bigger and stuff. And they, it was also a little bit more irreverent than I expected. You've got like the main, or not the main, but one of the main cast is like this sort of like alcoholic, actress and stuff. I was like, I didn't expect that from a character of this type in this era.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes, it's quite
expect her to be more of like a glamorous kind of thing, but she's just sort of like this
all
kind
the
of
characters
like,
are, they're a little bit more kind of hateful than you might expect, or spiteful, or
right. Yeah, they were less stereotypical than you would expect. You know, I
right,
expected sort of like the very stock characters, but they weren't. They had layers to them that they weren't.
yeah,
I didn't expect there to be.
nice
And then
sarcastic dialogue, and
yeah, a lot of, like, and then the as you said, the beatnik shows up, and it all just it just went to another level after that, right? So that
right.
like
Yeah, no,
it was just
it is fun. You can imagine back in 1964, it would have rocked a drive-in, right? I mean,
yeah, I guess so, yeah.
it would have probably distracted you from fucking your cousin in the backseat for a few minutes.
What drive-ins were you going to?
Well, we didn't have drive-ins, so I can only imagine the debauchery that happened.
Right. Okay. All right. But yeah, so I was quite pleasantly surprised by this. Had low expectations going in, so I think that probably helped for it. But yeah, it was I think it was really good fun, and it's on YouTube, so it's free.
Yeah.
Everyone can watch
Nice print
anytime.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked the add the extra scenes. It even says in the title of the video, like, with the extra Nazi scene,
Right.
Nazi
Right.
experiment
Those
scenes,
scenes are kind of
put it
cool,
back
yeah.
in. I thought that those were quite good, and they were quite. I mean, you can tell there's a little bit of difference in quality. It gets a little blurrier, but I thought that they were kind of interwoven quite seamlessly. I thought it was quite well with the voiceover and stuff.
Nicely trashy little addition, those scenes. I think I quite like. Just edited as well by Radley Metzger, who of course went on to become a very famous porno filmmaker and erotic filmmaker. The other thing, I think there's something to, like, I'm wondering if it's a connection to, when you're a kid, you play that game, how far can you go from here to there without stepping on the ground? That kind
yeah.
of,
Yeah,
and
like the floor is lava.
Yeah, there's something about films that have that. So there's a little bit of that in here. There's some scenes where they can't step on the water, they have to get from here to there. And it reminded me of, like, there's that film Blood Beach as well, where there's the thing under the sand, and there's another film more recently which uses the same kind of concept. There's something about when you see this concept in a film which is automatically, like, in the same way like Cube was, or something like that. There's something about that setup where you can't put your feet on the ground and you have to get, there's something about that works in films, isn't there? And I wonder if it taps into this thing that everyone, I think all kids everywhere in the world played some variation on this game somehow.
Oh, right.
So yeah, anything with that kind of element in is automatically kind of interesting. I think there's something about it is one of those primal things, right? Like
right, yeah. It hits you in the childhood, right? So
yeah, exactly. Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed this, and yes, I enjoyed watching it again as well. It was I remember it being kind of fun, and it's one of those. It's not a major kind of cult item. It's a slightly lesser known one, but I think it's one of those ones that's worth kind of putting in that category of little kind of gems of its era.
I was surprised that it wasn't more famous. I mean, that I hadn't really even heard of this movie, so I thought that this was quite well done. I thought it would be more famous than it is, so
yeah, no, it's certainly more well made, I think, than a lot of more well known but not quite as well done kind of cult films as well, right?
Yeah, it was. So it was a good little find. I was happy to watch it.
Right. So so we stay in Long Island, but we're traveling around Long Island a little bit now. I'm not sure where. We're over here. We're over there, and we're 10 years later, 1972. Again, filmed 71 though, and rather than proto gore film, I guess we're kind of in proto slasher mode.
Or slasher, yeah.
For Silent Night, Bloody Night, or as the copy we watched, Death House, or actually it's only got the one H, so it's Death House.
Death House.
The Welsh type. Death House.
Is that a Welsh word?
No, it's just the pronunciation of Death House. Did you see Death House? I saw Death House.
Or the Canadian pronunciation, Death House.
Death House. Ithus. There we go. Yes, wouldn't have killed them to put an extra H in, but they.
Yeah, I thought that came up right at the beginning. It was like ethos. I was like, wait, do they know what they just put? that doesn't make sense. Ethos.
Right. So this.
But I guess apparently this movie had many different
yes,
titles.
it did. Yes, it did. And
including Death House with 2 H's.
And one of those films that that just didn't get good distribution anywhere, I don't think.
Right. Yeah.
And first time I'd ever seen it in a halfway decent version as well. Like I'd seen, like most people had seen this film before. You've seen it in a shitty VHS. Had you seen this film before?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So written directed by.
I may have actually gotten this confused with Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. A very different film, though, right?
Right.
Written directed by Theodore Gershuni, who made Sugar Cookies as well, directed Sugar Cookies with Lynn Lowry of Shivers and I Drink Your Blood fame, getting naked again, which is always a good thing. And he was, I believe, part of Andy Warhol's The Exploding Plastic Inevitable. Was that what it's called? Exploding Plastic Inevitable? Yes, his kind of that Warhol factory thing, which had, Velvet Underground would play, and then in the background you'd have rear projection, and Theodore Gershuni, I think, was the whip wielding guy who would like whip the dancers, and one of the dancers being Mary Warrenoff, who is of course kind of the star of this film, I guess. Warrenoff.
Apparently, a lot of the actors in this were from the Warhol.
Warhol. Especially
Warhol superstars, they're called. I don't know what that means.
Yes, factory stars, right? Yeah. Particularly in the flashback scene where, spoilers, when we see it basically turns out to be a lunatics to take over the asylum story, right? Yeah, apparently, there's Ondine and Candy Darling and even Jack Smith, who wasn't really a Warhol person, but was an underground filmmaker who made like Flaming Creatures and sort of gay icon as well. So the interesting connection. I'm assuming they came in via the Gershuni Warrenov. That's how they ended up in this film, right?
Right. I assume it was like he got all his friends from the Warhol days.
And they all drove up from New York, for the weekend or whatever.
Right.
We spoke Mary Warrenov, of course, when we were talking Eating Raoul. Probably most famous, either that or Rock and Roll High School, right? Right. But I always like Mary Warrenoff is one of those cool cats, right? Like whenever you see her, you're like, Mary Warrenoff, very pleased to see you. I don't know what something about her. She's one of the good guys, I think, isn't she, Mary Warrenoff?
Right.
Yes. So it's a Christmas setting, I guess, and
sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, they kept humming Silent Night, so I assumed it was Christmas, but it was kind of not really that important to the plot, I guess.
And there's an opening flashback to a guy on fire in his garden in like the 1950s, right? And that kind of, to be honest, it's a slightly, I'm still not entirely sure exactly what the story is. Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that. And after I saw this movie, it turned it off, and I said the same thing. I was like, I actually have no idea what the story actually was there. And so I looked it up on Wikipedia because if I ever watch a movie that I don't understand the story, sometimes I'll look it up there and there'll at least be a summary of the whole plot. And sometimes it'll help me explain. And apparently that is what everyone thought, is that apparently the plot was so confusing that almost every reviewer just said, you don't really know what's happening in this movie. You kind of get, I mean, there's a plot synopsis that you kind of get the idea, but I'm glad that I wasn't the only one that didn't understand this movie. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, it's not. I mean, I kind of get the overall arc of it.
Kind of get it, but
I'm not quite
very
sure
muddled.
How it hangs together exactly.
Considering it's only like 81 minutes, I mean, there's really, it's a lot more muddled than it should be. So.
Yeah, so there's like a guy who's come back to town to claim his ancestral.
Yeah. Well, this is what I got from it. So
Yeah. Okay. Go for it.
so let's see if I can give it a shot. So there was a guy who owned it before named Butler, Wilford Butler.
Wilford Butler. Yeah.
Wilford Butler. He
He's the one
owned.
who burns, right? He's the one who burns.
Yeah, he's the one that burns. So he owned the place, and then spoilers. This is what we find out through the thing is that his daughter, so he was basically having an incestual relationship with his daughter,
Mm.
and his daughter got pregnant and had a baby, and then kind of went a little bit crazy. And so then he decided to turn his house into a mental institution and committed his daughter with the rest of the patients there.
Mm-hmm.
And then then the people who were running the asylum became this real kind of like fat cat, kind of like lazy people who basically abused all the inmates and like left them in squalor and like in the barn and stuff like that, and were like drinking like champagne and some of that, and so then the inmates kind of rebelled and then killed those people, and killed the people running the inmate and the daughter, because thinking that she was one of them.
Right.
Right. And burned Wilford alive.
Right.
Right. And then, so the house was left to the baby, the incestuous baby,
right,
Jeffrey,
yeah,
who had nothing to do with the house for years and years and years, and finally comes back to try to sell it.
Right.
But it turns out that Wilford wasn't dead the whole time, but was was living in the house, or sort of like that, and all of the people in the whole town were all the inmates,
right,
who have
they
now
took over
become
the town, basically.
that they've taken over the town, and now so all of the mayor, all of the people, all the sheriff, they're all the inmates who killed the people running the inmate and now run the town.
Right.
So now it's Wilford has come back, and because they killed his daughter, he's bringing them back into the house and killing them off one by one.
But there's also someone else who's escaped from a mental asylum, right? Which is a bit of a kind of a red herring.
Well, that was Wilford.
All right. Okay. Right.
Yeah, so the thing is that he got committed, or he was hiding. That's right. After this whole, because he escaped. Oh, that's what it was. Is that they killed all the people running it, but he got away and was hiding in a mental institution. And then at this point, at the beginning of the movie, he escaped from his mental institution to come back, and then that's when the whole killing starts. He starts killing, getting revenge on the people who killed his daughter, but also killing the guy trying to sell the house. I don't know what that was all about.
Yeah, so there's a lawyer who's employed, played by Patrick O'Neill, who turns up with his stunningly hot model girlfriend.
Yeah.
Played by what's her name? Astrid Heron, right?
Yeah. But I guess she was I guess his assistant, and he was like called his wife, so I guess he was having an affair with his assistant.
Yeah. Just a surprise to see her, because even if you don't know who she is, she just stands out like, oh, what, number one, what's she doing with him? And also like, she just looks impossibly glamorous for this film, even if you don't know who she is. But it turns out she was like quite the top model, and she was in the Thomas Crown Affair, for example. So it's very strange to see her in this film. Like, you wouldn't expect her to be slumming it in this film, right?
Right.
There she is. So that's kind of an interesting. That's kind of an interesting thing as well. Lloyd Kaufman of Trauma fame was worked on this film as well as
oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's the first film the Canon released as well. So even though I explained it, even then it's still kind of muddled, right? It's very Also worth mentioning John Carradine's interesting performance as well in this film as a man who doesn't speak, but
you pronounced it Carradine? I've always heard it Carradine.
Who, let's call the whole thing off, who hits a bell, right, rather than speak. He's just bing, just hits this bell every now and again.
How does he hit the bell?
Bing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Bing-a-dine.
That sounds about right.
Bing-a-dine or bing-a-dine. And yeah, so there's a lot of, and that story actually, now that you've laid it out, it's quite a good, I quite like the concept behind it. But it's
it was just not really laid out or explained.
It's a very disjointed film.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of goes all over the place, and then you're like, wait, well, who is this and what's happening?
Yeah.
And yeah,
it's not necessarily I mean, it's got a lot of mood. It's got a lot of mood, and it's got this very pre-Evil Dead-y prowling camera work stuff every now and again. I'm sure you were the same as me, Ron. Any of those scenes involving the phone call immediately made me think of Black Christmas.
Yes, exactly. And I would say that Black Christmas, I mean, also being a Christmas horror movie, I assume it was a direct kind of like homage to that.
I don't know. I mean, you could see how it could totally be a coincidence as well, right? I mean, it's not as if it's a direct steal, but it's just, there's something about the vibe of it more than the fact that, and because the thing is, the Black Christmas has always been, for me, that's the proto one, right? Like all those other films that came along later that ripped off Black Christmas. But it turns out there's a proto to the proto, right? Like you're really going back to the roots here, right? Like
right.
This is even before that, and even beyond that, it clearly does have these slasher movie kind of, and seeing that stuff in its embryonic form is kind of interesting, because it was still kind of somewhat fresh. So even though the film's not making much sense, it's kind of creepy. There's something kind of creepy about it, and it's not boring. It's just very disorientating. But then again, that disorientation as well, I suppose, adds another layer of kind of creepiness and weirdness. So it's kind of an interesting little movie, kind of despite itself in a way, right? Like it's accidentally kind of an interesting watch, I found.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, definitely thinking of it as the beginnings or the origin of these types of movies, it has it is almost trailblazing in a lot of ways, some ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just kind of wish it was a little bit more clear in what it was trying. It was just really muddled, and I think it just kind of worked against it ultimately, right? So I didn't find it disorienting in a good way. I just thought it was kind of like, wait, what? What's happening? So yeah,
it's a difficult film to certainly a difficult film to recommend, but I think if you're a horror fan and you've never seen it and you are interested in the history of for instance, a slash film, I think it is definitely worth a look, I think.
Right.
And like I said, it does have a mood to it, which it's it's not a rubbish film. It's not a terrible film. It's not a bad film. It's just something happened along the way, and it got kind of scrambled, right?
Right. And I'm not sure if it was like that from the beginning, or if maybe it was like a post-production or something. I don't know what happened to it, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, the story is a little bit convoluted in itself. They could have just laid it out in a better way, or made the reveal a little bit more very as it is. The reveal is kind of like, wait, what? So
yeah, it has a very similar story to that movie Don't Look in the Basement as well, which is another kind of which is probably a film we'll get to when we get to Texas in about 500 years. So so it curates egg, right? It's of interest, but I'm not sure if I don't think I'd recommend it to a more casual viewer as a Halloween watch or something like that.
Right. No.
Christmas
or a Christmas watch either. Yeah. I think that the Christmas connection is also quite tenuous. I don't think it really. I'm not really sure why they made it Christmas one specifically. I mean, it didn't really seem that important.
Right. Also, going back to the other show we do, Kronos was a Christmas film as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, but that got left by the wayside. Probably should have actually mentioned that on the podcast that was actually about that.
That was actually about that movie. Yeah. So, yes.
But there you go. Those are paying attention.
That movie is called that podcast is called The Magic Morning Wood, by the way.
Yeah, and it's even better than this, if you can imagine such a thing. So I think that's us, over and out for sorry, I made a classic mistake. That's, people don't say that, right? Over and out. It's either over or out. Like over and out doesn't make sense. I know they do it in movies, but it's wrong. It's not correct CB technique. Because over means over to
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It means over to you, respond.
Oh, I see.
But
right. Oh, okay. Because over means over to you, and then out
Yeah.
means finish the
yeah,
conversation.
so
right?
over and out is oxymoron.
So that it's almost like saying, "Okay, your turn to speak." Click. Right, and then
Exactly.
and then-
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Gotcha.
It's very
Yeah.
bad CB etiquette. So all you CB enthusiasts, well, you already know this. I'm preaching to the converted. So anyway, here's some garage rock from Long Island. Until next time, bye bye.
Bye bye. Oh, you.
Is that too? I'll go.
Drive? I'll drive. Okay.
Oh no, we crashed. We both.
Oh no.
Who is driving?
I'm driving. That's much.
Yeah, the road lawyer hit me.
I love you.